Right, so in the previous tutorial we have seen how to construct this data manager to initializing our test data, and let's create a schema to manage our JSON objects. So schema is basically a definition or standard definition for our JSON objects. Then we can use it as a well-defined standard schema to store and retrieve the data from our database, right? Otherwise, if you are directly storing our JSON objects, then it won't be quite good practice, right? So this models folder specifically denote to define such schemas, and yeah, let's create one schema, and I will name this as post model, right? So inside this post model, I'm gonna require mongoose again. So mongoose require mongoose, and this is const, and let's create a schema like post schema and new mongoose dot schema, and schema can be defined as a JSON object, and once it defined, we can construct a model by using that post schema, and I will name this model as simply post. And once that model is constructed, we can export it. Then other JS files can use this model as a reference, right? So the schema will contain these fields, so it must contain ID, title, content, and created date, but we don't need to specifically create this ID field, because MongoDB automatically create a random ID for each JSON objects. Therefore, we only need to define these three fields, right? So first field we require is title, and title have a type of string, and it is a required field as well, which means you can't store a JSON object that doesn't have a title, right? So it is my specific use case, so you may have different use cases. So based on that requirement, you need to define these properties in your schema, right? So in my case, I will say this title is a required field, but in case if this field is not required, we need to make an error or make a warning back to the user, saying that the title can't be empty, right? So that specific exception can be defined like this. So required is true, and if it is not true, which means the title is empty, then it will make a error like this by saying title can't be empty, right? Then we can define several other properties as well. For example, let's say we can define a minimum length to your title. So let's say minimum length is 3, and the error, let's say title can't be smaller than 3 characters. In a similar fashion, we can define max length as well. So max length, let's say maybe 100 characters, and let's say title can't be larger than 100 characters, right? So that's how we defined a specific field that defines a specific specific field of JSON object, and like that fashion we can define any other fields as well, right? So first field is title and the second field requires content, so I will simply copy that thing and I will rename this as content, and let's say content can't be empty and content can't be smaller than maybe, let's say, 10 characters, right? And let's say content can't be smaller, content can't be larger than maybe 1000 characters, right? So likewise, depends on your user requirements, you can tweak these values and properties as well. Then the last thing we require is created at field. So created at field is having the type of date, and usually we don't send this date through our payload, right? Because this is automatically generated. Therefore we need to specify specifically that it has a default value. So default value is a value that will be initialized when this specific JSON object or document is going to store, right? So let's say the default value is date.now. Then the date field will be automatically populated as well, right? So that's how we can construct our schema, right? So once this schema is constructed, we can basically call this schema, not the schema actually, the model within any files when we need to interact with our database, right? So yeah, so now we can maybe go to the data manager and we can maybe create sort of a connection, right? So let's see, I need to persist this object once I entered a specific command, right? So maybe I will show this stuff in the next video, otherwise this video will be quite long. But yeah, so that's the main idea. So once we define this model, we can import this model to any other JS files that we want. So let's say controller file or maybe data manager file. Then once that model is exposed or imported to this specific file, we can perform the relevant DB functions, right? Right. So I will see you in the next video.